Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. This afternoon, I will be chairing the hearing. My name is Robert Hutchings. I'm joined on the panel by Ian Mann and Brent McIntyre. Our assessors today are Matthew Barakis and Justin Mikulik. And our secretary today will be Stephen Lunn. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which a revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit the discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal further, any information on how to do so will be included with this board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questioning again. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Today, we will be hearing items 2 and 4 on the docket. Mr. Lund, could you please affirm the assessor and the applicant's testimony?
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name. Justin Mikulik. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you. And Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Matthew Stephen Barakis.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, stand. Please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Lund. First property on the docket today is item number 2, 500 Waterfront Drive. File number 22-269, and we're dealing with a 2023 realty appeal. And just to confirm that from both parties, there are no preliminary issues to deal with on this. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Assessor, bear with us 1 second. And we're going to get 500 Waterfront Drive, the document submitted by you, in a minute. Okay, when you're ready, please, Mr. Assessor.
Okay, so the first property, 500 Waterfront, the assessed value for the 2023 roll year you could see is $12,101,000.
Justin, excuse me, sorry, would you mind reading in the roll number?
Oh, sorry.
The record? No problem.
File number 22-269, roll number 130-990-68050.
Thank you.
And so the roll year 2023 assessed value 12,101,000. Properties taxable with residential 220 classification. The year built 2013 to 2015, and it's a residential apartment. The gross floor area is 64,206 square feet, and construction with wood, steel framed exterior walls. We scroll down, we got the request for income information. The property has submitted since 2014. No sales. And now we get to the income value summary. So it consists of 18 one-bedroom and 46 two-bedrooms for a total of 64 units. Average monthly rent per unit at $1,281.88. And we can scroll through the income statement here from the city. And you could see we got a net operating income of $592,945, capitalization rate 4.9% to come up with a value of $12,101,000. And just on the next page, we got our rent comparables. So you could see that the subject compared to the other properties does fall in line with the rents, and they're all similar properties within proximity of 500 waterfront. So we'll get to the capitalization rate evidence. So we have presented some actual sales here to support some of our cap rates. They range from 3.6% to 4.79%. Now, I will add there will be future sales added to this going forward that we have ranging from 5.05% to 5.74%, but it wasn't out at the time that this docket was produced. These sales go on to support our capitalization rates on the next page, which fall between the 4.8 and 5.6% range. And then those fall with the 20th to 80th percentiles you can see on that page there with the multifamily sales.
Justin, before you proceed, I'm sorry, would you mind going back to your workup and highlighting your vacancy rate and your cap rate you're using?
Yeah, for sure. The vacancy rate is 3.2%. And the cap rate 4.9%.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Was there anything else?
No, you can proceed. Yeah.
Okay. So next page, Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. We can scroll to the actual now that the property did submit for 2020. So you could see that they have a net operating income of $60,871, along with a total gross rent potential of $906,000. So reasonably, we feel that based on those numbers that they've submitted. Oh, sorry, there was 600,871, my bad. 600,871. So based on those numbers, compared with our model, it's a new building. We feel that we're right in line with the net operating income that we have at $592,945.
Okay, thank you very much, Justin.
And just you could see there's some extra pictures added just to show that the building is fairly newer, and so repair and maintenance on the building's gonna be a little bit lower. And you could see that's reflected in what they've reported on the income statement here from 2020 at 47,360. So it's around, I guess that would be around 560 a unit. So it is newer. So I think we're right in line with our NOI.
Okay, thank you very much. Matthew, would you like to add anything, or you're just?
Nope, that was good.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mr. Smith, any questions on the brief presented by the assessor?
Yes, I do have a few. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at page number 4 to begin with, and the rental comparables provided here. So each, we have 160 Smith, 207 Edmonton, 180 Roslyn, and 346 Broadway. None of these would be located in the East Exchange, is that correct?
No, they're not located there. So yes, that's correct.
Okay. And looking at 160 Smith, this is located at Smith and York, and it's advertised as luxury rental units. Is that correct?
We don't have that information in our brief.
Okay. All right. Similarly, 180 Roslyn. This is a new build apartment in 2019 on the west side of Osborne in Osborne Village. Also advertised as luxury rental with ensuite laundries, etc. As I have to ask that as a question, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the other two properties are also in that, well, 207 Edmonton is at St. Mary's, Broadway, obviously on Broadway, right downtown. Those are either recent or heavily renovated. Is that correct?
I don't have that information.
Okay. And then again, just quickly, and you had alluded to this, the cap rate evidence that's provided on page 5, all of these caps fall under 5, but as you had indicated, you'll be adding further cap rate evidence trending up towards 5.7%. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in referring to the net operating income from the income and expense information provided on, I guess it's page 8 and 9 there, that would be a single year that you're looking at, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Mann, any questions? Ian, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
Just with respect to the cap rates, the 3.6 to the 4.79, when you had referred to the increase in cap rate or the cap rate variables that are going to be added, when are those going to be added? And second part of the question is, were those sales after the reference date?
I can take this one because I did these sales. So
okay.
These sales, the sales that will be added in submissions going forward. The information wasn't available at the time when the deadline for our evidence was for this one, but it's for briefs going forward. And yes, to your second question, the sales that will be included are not post-reference.
Okay, one follow-up to the follow-up question, if I might. Did those cap rate, or did those sales affect the calculation of the cap rate for 500 Waterfront?
No, the sales that are given are just meant to substantiate the fact that the range that the model is calculating is reflective of site-specific actuals.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Ian. Brent, any questions of the assessors?
Just one question. On page 3, the suite mix is shown in your income summary, 18 one-bedrooms and 46 two-bedrooms. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yet on the mailer, let me just get there. So on page 11 of your submission, it's showing one bedroom 13 units and two bedroom 51 units. I guess my question is, which one is correct?
Well, I mean, based on the inventory we have in our records, it looks like there's a discrepancy. So that's something we're going to have to investigate and correct if necessary.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Thank you, Brent. Justin, my question is location of the subject property. We're on Waterfront. Is it on the north end of Waterfront? What corner would that be on?
So we're gonna be on the not like riverfront, so it's just gonna be George Avenue and between George Avenue and Heaton, right in the middle. I guess it would be the west side of Waterfront by the round. There's a roundabout.
Okay. But is it on the river or across the street?
It's across the street. Like it's not on like the river bank side. So it runs the west side of Waterfront, but you can't develop properties. I don't think there's a park there, Port Douglas Park.
Okay. So we're actually closer to the ballpark, is that correct? That'd be fair to say, or?
I mean, yeah, like probably a 10-minute walk.
Oh, okay.
I would say 5 to 10-minute walk, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, okay. Because the photos seem to indicate that it's got on the water. Maybe, I guess the road is hidden from the photos taken. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I don't think judging by these photos you could see it. Like I know there is that one, I guess it was sort of in the kitchen area. It looked like, yeah, the patio. So yeah, you can't see the road there running through.
Like the balcony photo, the first one after the front.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I see. All right. So we're across the road. So, but river influence, I guess, would be fair to say. Okay. And and just to confirm, when Ian asked about the new information for cap rates, that'll be forward. That's nothing to do with that's not being presented at this hearing. Is that right?
No,
Okay.
I don't have it.
All right. Okay. That is all my questions. Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, if you bear with me 1 second, I'm going to get to your brief. Okay, everybody, Ian, Brent, you've got it. Mr. Smith's brief?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. When you're ready, please, Trevor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just perhaps address a couple of things to start with to clarify some items and kind of set the stage for the property itself. So just to begin with, I have made a slight adjustment in my valuation for you here today, which is one simple change. So the final market value that I am presenting has increased somewhat to $10,754,000, and we'll get to that when we get into the valuation of the property itself. Just to clarify the riverfront issue, if you can direct your attention to my page number 10, I'll wait until you get to that spot. So we have, you're all on page 10 there. So we have two buildings on site, a 4-story and a 2-story. And as you can see, kind of the corners of them abut the waterfront drive there with a parkland area, Alexander Docks being on the other side of waterfront, and then the river, of course. So just given the orientation of the properties, there's not significant amenity, I would suggest, provided by the river, just given the orientation of the properties itself in terms of location. Secondly, and related to that, is that particular location actually an amenity? And I would suggest to you that the location of the subject property is actually a significant detriment to the market value of this particular property. We'll discuss that on my page 11 in a bit, but what I will do to begin with is direct your attention to my addenda beginning on page number A-8. So I've provided a number of articles, all within the relevant time frame with regard to the immediate area surrounding the subject property. So the first article on A-8 from 2019 is with regard to a shooting incident essentially adjacent to the subject property, where an individual was hospitalized with multiple gunshot wounds. That is the block that the subject is on. Heaton is to the north of the subject, with George just to the south of it. Beyond that, moving on to page A-9, we have another article from 2017. Police seize guns, drugs on Waterfront Drive. You can see the relevant information on A-9 and A-10. Moving on to A-11, another article from November 2020. This is actually with regard to the subject property and the owner itself. The article here is a description of a conversation with the property owner from this particular reporter, indicating a big increase in vandalism and theft at his property lately. He's had to move some tenants around, and he's looking to help resolve that situation, but hasn't had a lot of traction with that. Moving beyond that, A-12 and onwards, we have an article from 2018 with regard to the Alexander Docks. And I'm not going to go through this in any detail because we're simply setting the stage, but you can see the aerial on page A13, as well as the description and the issues that are described there with regard to crime, particular homicide that we're probably all familiar with, etc. So long story short, the subject property, while located on Waterfront Drive, it's at the north end of Waterfront Drive. And the area that it's within certainly has significant crime issues, as well as direct property crime as well as vandalism, property damage that have occurred at the subject property itself, as noted in the Addendum Materials. So that is the area that we're dealing with. So the fact that the property is built relatively newly in the 2013-2015 timeframe with the two different buildings, I would suggest to you does not necessarily mean that this property is going to draw premium rents and have any particular upside in terms of raising those rents. We'll have some challenges with regard to drawing tenants and having to discount rents, and investor interest in this particular location would be impacted by the location of the property itself. So all that being said, let's move into my brief itself. Cover page, you can see an exterior of the 4-story building that was built on site. We have both a 4-story and a 2-story located here. The actual unit count is as indicated by the property owner. 13 1-beds and 51 2-beds are the actual count, for a total of 64 units. You look at my page number 3. You can see some further detail regarding subject property. We have 2023 assessment of $12,101,000. This is a jump in value of nearly $1.9 million versus the 2020 assessment. Following
Mr. Smith, I'll stop you right there, please. We're not going to put any weight on comparisons of older assessments or board decisions on this property. We're dealing with this as a new hearing.
Mr. Chair, I certainly understand that, and I respect that. I'm simply presenting the history of the property for consideration by all of the panel members. So each of the prior years is presented there for you. As you can see, we have the zoning, etc., presented, and the total site area of 1.4 acres. Moving into the property itself, the property owner was also the developer and retains interest, the whole interest in the property. He did not build a luxury apartment, given where he was building it. You can see from the interiors of the units that these are not high-end units. Certainly, they're fine and appropriate for where they are, but you can't consider these to be luxury units. In addition to that, there are no amenities essentially provided at the unit, at the property that would lead to increases in potential rental values, etc. Description of the property is given on page 9. Your basic vinyl flooring with some carpet in the living and bedrooms. I'll leave that for you gentlemen to review at your leisure. And we can move beyond that. Site description, which I've already covered a little bit, is shown on page number 10. We have a total of 1.4 acres. And the location is shown on page number 11. So you can see that the property is considerably further north on Waterfront Drive, close to that terminus at Higgins, quite far away from the ballpark on the southern end, as well as the more luxury-oriented rentals that are developed towards that end of Waterfront. The location description on page 11 covers a lot of the ground that I did in the addenda, simply indicating the social and criminal issues that are a significant issue in that particular area. Again, these also are directly impacting on the subject property with regard to vandalism, theft, and property damage. Let's move on to the actual valuation, page number 13. And we have the income side of the ledger. First of all, of course, What I've given you here in the chart in the middle of the page is the actual monthly rents being charged as of the valuation date. So we have 1-bedroom units going for $1,100 a month and 2-bedroom units going for $1,200 a month. You can see this results in a gross potential income of $906,000 once tabulated. 2020 income and expense questionnaire indicates the property actually collected $917,616 in income in 2020, slightly over that rental rate structure. I imagine that was some fluctuation in particular rents that carried over before they were reduced. However, the annual property rental value has fluctuated significantly, with 2019 annual rental revenue of $890,678 and 2018 annual rental value of $468,271. Actual rental rates have declined in the subject property moving forward from 2018. So in contrast to many properties in the city, we're not seeing any lift, obviously, in the rental rates for the subject. The CMHC Fall 2020 rental market report stats are quoted for you there. Subject property is in the Lord Selkirk area, and I've given you the averages for Lord Selkirk and Winnipeg as a whole. You can see 2 beds, both in Lord Selkirk and Winnipeg, average $1,291 and $1,262. So slightly above the subject property, but obviously there's a reason for the rates that are being charged at this location, with 1 beds there for you as well. We've also provided a survey of comparable rental properties for you on page number 14. These are in the downtown area. Generally, we're not looking at properties that are, adjacent to the subject, but these are as comparable as we're able to find. So I'll let you run through those if you wish. We have 316 Ross, 100 Princess Street, 283 Portage, 49 Adelaide, and 311 Alexander. Now, if you go through the comments on these, you can see that they have been obviously significantly upgraded with very contemporary build out in the units themselves, as well as some amenities for some of them, such as indoor parking, etc. So these vary in comparability, but our overall averages, min, mean, and max, are shown for you on the bottom of page 14, with the average being 1,100 for 1 beds and 1,280 for 2 beds. Now, keep in mind that, again, these properties are generally better located and have better furnishings for the units themselves. So is the subject property at market at the rates they're charging? Yes, I would say that it certainly is. We've included parking revenue in our analysis, and there is no laundry revenue for the subject property, as that is not provided. The expense side, let's move on to page 15. The CMHC Fall 2020 vacancy stats are shown for you there. Again, we're in Lord Selkirk. So 2 beds are shown at 3.6 and 1 bed's at 3.3%. We have applied a vacancy rate of 2% in our analysis, somewhat lower than the city's 3.2% for the subject property. They in our analysis. Oh, I'm sorry, we're in Centennial, not Lord Selkirk. My mistake. So the actual 2-bed vacancy is 9% and 1 bedroom is 7.8%. My apologies for that. So on the vacancy, we're being conservative in our evaluation. Let's move on to the expense allowance. So what we've done is an analysis of a 3-year history of the property, and we've gone through the exercise of stabilizing these particular amounts. You can see how that was done in the table provided. Where appropriate, we've used 3-year averages. Where adjustments were needed, you can see how that was done, such as 5% applied for property management, 5% of effective gross income, that is. We have increased the repair and maintenance to a minimal level of $1,200 per unit. Yes, the property is relatively new, but they do have significant vandalism and property damage that does occur at this location. So once we go through the stabilization exercise, we have a 2021 stabilized expense ratio or expense amount of $340,547. This equates to 37.69% of our effective gross income. We go back in time to the 2017 year, so a full operating year. We had year-end operating expenses for the subject property at that time of $375,657, so above what we're projecting for the subject property, and just prior to this particular time frame. So that is how the expenses have been arrived at. Moving on to capitalization rate. Again, obviously capitalization rate selection is quite critical. Would this particular property, given its issues and location, draw a premium cap rate from an astute market investor, or would they assign a slightly higher risk premium in their selection of cap rate when they're buying a property such as this? So let's look at the market. What I've presented on the page here in the chart is a selection of properties that were purchased in the relevant time frame for the in-place income and expense. That being, they were not purchased for renovation in order to increase the net income and thereby increase the return to the investors. So these are true cap rate sales. We have 7 of them as shown. They vary in size and location, age, etc. But really what we're looking at here is the rate that the investors have assigned to the property. So we're looking at a range of 5.2% on the low end up to a high of 6.7%, with the bulk of them being in that 5.2 to 5.7% range. Let's move on. Also on cap rates, and bear with me here because we'll only do this once. We won't cover the same ground twice in the second property here today. What I've presented on pages 18, 19, and 20 is information from 2 of the main commercial real estate brokerages with regard to their capitalization reports that they put out either on an annual or semi-annual basis. So to start with, we have Colliers, and I've given you reports from Q1 2016, 2018, and 2020. So giving you a bit of a timeline for these. I'll just quickly quote from what I have here. Colliers cap rates remain very stable between the 2016, 18, and 2020 cap rate surveys, with high-rise apartments varying between 5 to 5.75% in 2016 and 5 and 6% in 2018 and 2020. Equally, they have low-rise apartments varying between 5.25% and 6% in 2016, and 5% and 6% in 2018 and 2020. So that's Colliers. Certainly one of the major transactors of investment grade real estate in the city. Beyond that, we have CB Richard Ellis, same time frame, 2016, 18, and 20. And those are on pages 19 and 20. CB Richard Ellis's cap rate report for 2020 for Winnipeg is indicating low-rise apartments, which the subject would fall into being between 5.25% and 6%. So that those two brokerages certainly are well regarded, well respected players in the investment real estate market in the city. They transact many properties, and their ranges that they're presenting are certainly based on their intelligence of the market at that particular time, the relevant time frame for our valuation here today. Now, looking at the subject property, again, we have a new property. There is no renovation potential for this to increase rents. It's relatively new, so you're essentially looking at the property as is. Certainly, there's no opportunity to increase your return. The data that we have from the subject property indicates that we have a declining trend in the rental rates in the subject property itself. So that's due obviously to desirability of that particular location and the units themselves. So we're seeing an overall trend towards lower rental rates for the subject. That's certainly not going to draw a premium from an astute investor. And the location I've talked about extensively. So when we look at the subject property in relation to the market universe as a whole, what would be a fair capitalization rate to apply to the subject? Now, initially, I had applied a cap rate of 5.5% to the subject property. In hindsight, I feel that this is probably slightly high. So given that review, I've changed my valuation to a 5.25% capitalization rate. Again, typically we're seeing quarter point changes in rates applied. So we've changed that to 5.25%. Now, this falls certainly within the market data that we've presented within the low end of the range with the commercial real estate brokerage information presented with a very steady trend with regard to cap rates over the last 6 years, essentially. So I'm very comfortable with presenting 5.25% as the appropriate cap for the subject property. Now, if you move on to page 2022, or rather 2022, you can see a summary of the valuation that I've completed for the subject property in the chart adjacent to City of Winnipeg's 2023 valuation of the subject, as well as their 2020 valuation of the subject for your review there. So again, the income in place, we believe, is certainly at market. We've applied a conservative vacancy rate of 2%. The stabilized expenses of $340,000 are well under what the city has projected, as well as being a similar expense amount, or percent rather. And when we use a 5.25% cap rate, this gives us our final value of $10,754,000. The addendum materials, I've already gone through a bunch of them. A1 through A3 is the income and expense information for the subject here as provided by the property owner. If you look at A4 through A7, This is the information from our prior appeal of the property where the decision was based on my valuation of the subject property, shown on page A7. That is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Do the assessors have any questions on the applicant's evidence presented?
Yeah, so I have a question here just in regards to the repair and maintenance that was used to calculate the property. So I guess it would be on page 16, the expense allowance. So like from 2018 to 2020, they've recorded lower repair and maintenance. And I see here you've applied 1,200 a unit. So like, why is their repair and maintenance so low historically, but then the 1,200 unit gets applied, or 1,200 per unit gets applied? I just kind of wondering how that figure came about.
Certainly. So in looking at the history of the subject property, if we go back to 2017, we did have significantly higher total expenses of $375,000. So it's not that each and every year is necessarily low. They have had years where there's been significant property damage that has had to be repaired, both external, given the location, but also internal to the units themselves, where some of the tenants that they had to remove did extensive damage to the units themselves. So that has also driven the repair and maintenance. The 1,200 per unit rate is certainly on the conservative side in terms of repair and maintenance. I know the property is relatively new, but typically on an overall basis, we're seeing $1,500 per unit and up in the marketplace as a standard. So when you do have damage within the units themselves, there is a significant cost to that. So while I recognize that the repair and maintenance for these 3 years in particular, for this particular time frame, are not reflecting that, our job, of course, is to look at the broader time horizon as well, which is why we've applied 1,200 per unit as a conservative measure.
Just to touch on, did 2017 have capital repairs?
I'm afraid I don't have the 2017 information in my brief here today, nor do I have access to it on the computer.
Okay. And then further on, I just want to touch here on the vacancy. Like when you had said the area was undesirable, when we look at the actuals for calculating vacancy, I mean, it works out to less than 1%. So how does that line up with the contention that the area is undesirable?
Well, the area itself is, as I've stated in my readings of the articles provided, as well as my conversations with the owner and just general market knowledge, the particular area is undesirable. If you look at, I'm not sure if it's going to indicate it on this particular year or not. I suspect that it doesn't. But I know that they have had significantly greater vacancy than the 2% that I'm indicating. Now, let's look at this. Let's look at this on a basic level as well. When we're doing a market value for assessment, or for appraisal for that matter, you're looking at a time horizon. So we're not simply looking at a single point in time. We're looking at what would be appropriate for the property over, call it a 5-year time horizon or a 3-year time horizon that a typical investor would look at the subject property. Now, is 2% a reasonable estimate of that? Certainly it is. I would also, I guess, comment that perhaps the lower rental rates at that particular point in time might lead to slightly higher occupancy for the property at that point.
And then just one more question here about cap rate. If you go to, I guess, page 17 of your brief, you have 7 sales, but there's no, like, how come there's no addresses on them? And then you used, like, there's 2 sales here on Kildare Avenue East with the same age and number of suites. Like, how come you chose those 2, and then along with St. Mary's Road, like, was that a riverfront property as well?
So number of questions there. I'll start with the first one. So client confidentiality is somewhat critical in our industry, which is the reason that we have not presented the actual addresses or further detail. This is very common practice in the industry and is well known by the board. So we're not out of not doing anything unusual there. The properties on Kildare, I guess what I would indicate just overall, the properties that are presented are intended to be reflective of the general range of investment sales in the market. Are there those that may fall below the rates that are there? Certainly. Are there ones that would fall above those rates? Certainly there are. But what we've presented are well-researched properties that give you a general indication of the typical range of cap rates that an astute investor would be purchasing properties at as of the valuation date.
And like, are any of them riverfront?
I'm sorry, are any of the properties riverfront?
Yeah.
Well, we're looking at Portage Avenue, that is not riverfront. Grant, obviously, Ferndale. St. Mary's is not. Balmoral, Kildare. So no, clearly none of these are waterfront. I think we've heard extensively from me with regard to the value of the waterfront location for this particular property. I would not attribute any premium to this property being a waterfront. The location is such that it certainly does not add to the property. In addition, we're looking at two stories and 4 stories in terms of the build out. We're not looking at a tower of 10 stories or anything where you have a beautiful view up and down the Red River. At most, you would have a few units that might have a glimpse of Alexander Docks area and the river.
And just with the 2 sales on Kildare Avenue, is that the same property?
It is not.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Brent, any questions of the applicant?
No, I have no questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian, any questions of the applicant?
I do have some with respect to the Annex A or the A that you provided some anecdotal evidence or reporting evidence of police and drugs over someone to 2017 and one in 2019. Mm-hmm. Do you have any crime statistics available for that particular area as opposed to other areas in the city where cap rates may change?
I did actually, we did look online to see whether we could identify identify stats down to the level where it would be the subject area, and I was not, or my office rather, was not able to necessarily pick ones out that would clearly identify, say, north waterfront versus south waterfront or further into the exchange. So we didn't necessarily feel that would be appropriate to present, as it might not give you the proper picture. I could look at that for the future, certainly.
Well, I was just asking what was available today,
Yeah.
and it's not. Is that getting your answer? Now, as far as the crime, you said there was an increase in vandalism around the suites, and there was an increase in property damage. I was just looking at your expenses,
Right.
and I'm looking at your security costs, and I think that's on page 14. I've got it of your report here.
Yes.
Yeah, no, not 14. I don't think it's
Page number 16 is where the
Page 16. Okay, thank you. Now, just looking at those, there hasn't been a significant increase in security costs in your expense table over the course of, 2019 looks like there was about $150, $140 a month, zero in 2020, stabilized rate of $1,000 a month.
Yeah, so we had 500 in 2018, 1689 in 2019, and they had indicated zero in that 2020 timeframe. Now, I recognize what this is showing. In my conversations with the owner, they built property in 2013 and 2015, and they kind of had immediate issues with vandalism as well as theft from the parking lot, etc. So they did heavy investment into cameras and other security measures relatively early on. So it may not reflect it necessarily in the 2020 year, obviously, but they have had to take measures beyond what is typical for a normal apartment block with regard to security. So I think the $1,000 estimate is, certainly supportable.
Okay. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. And I have no questions at this time. Brent, did I ask you already? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, you did, Bob.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so any requirement for summary by either party at this time? Justin first.
No summary.
Okay, thank you. Trevor, any requirement for summary?
Oh, that's fine, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes 500 Waterfront Drive. Before we proceed, does anybody require a quick break?
No, we're okay here.
No, we're okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next property on the docket is item number 4. Excuse me, file number 22268. And that is 1266 College Avenue. Please bear with us a second, Justin, before we find the appropriate documents, please.
Yeah.
Okay, Justin, when you are ready, please, 1266 College Avenue.
So this is file number 22-268, roll number 14041460100. And we are talking about the roll year of 2023 and the assessed value of $2,187,000. the classification being residential 2 and liability is taxable. So it is a residential apartment, 2-story, the effective year built being 1977 to reflect the renovations from the actual year built in 1962. We have 16 outdoor parking stalls, and the construction class is masonry bearing walls. And you could see that the income and expense mailers have been submitted over the past 4 years. And we have a sale in October of 2017 for a value of 1.250 million, which would be before renovations. Now, for number of units, we have 1 bachelor, 8 1-bedroom, and 8 2-bedroom for a total of 17 units and an average monthly rent of $1,018.26. And you could see here our income workup with the gross potential rent 207,000, the vacancy rate at 4.2%, and then we work out to a net operating income of 106,087 with a 4.85% capitalization rate. And we presented some rent comparables which fall in line within the area, and the buildings effective year built a little bit less than our subject, but you could see that with the average monthly rents fall in a reasonable range. So moving on, again, we're touching on the cap rate evidence again, like the last docket, where we didn't have those numbers submitted yet for the extra cap rate sales that we'll be providing, those ones between 5.05 and 5.74%. And then similar again from the last brief, where the city ranges again between 4.8% to 5.6% is the 20th to 80th percentile for our data. Now, scrolling down to page 8, here where we look at their income and expense questionnaire. So we could see they have lower maintenance and repair reported on the expenses, and their net operating income coming in at 130,462, and with us at our model value being 106,087. So even if we wanted to say bump the repair and maintenance up to say $1,000 per unit, we're still coming in less than theirs would be adjusted to say 113,015. So we feel pretty good about where we are on this property from a net operating income perspective there. And then we've also just attached some pictures of the property so that you could see inside what the newly renovated state would look like. But yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Thank you, Justin. Trevor, any questions of the assessor's evidence presented?
I do have a few quick ones, yes. So you had indicated that the property has been very recently renovated?
Yes.
Okay. And when we look at the income and expense information on page number 8, this is for the 2020 year end, correct?
Yeah.
That's a single point in time, correct?
Yes.
So we're not looking at any kind of time horizon on that particular number that is developed there. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's correct. This is 1 year.
And then looking at the capitalization rate chart on page number 6 and the multifamily section of it. So the 20th percentile is 4.8. And the 80th percentile is 5.6. So the subject property, the city has applied a 4.85% capitalization rate, nearly the bottom end of the 20th percentile. Can you comment on that, please?
As far as the model cap rate, I'm not a modeler, so I can't really comment on that exact number being applied.
Okay, but the property would be structurally older, having been built in 1962. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And as this is the 80th percentile, what does the range go up to at the top end for the city?
There are some that are in the 7% range.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Ian, any questions of the assessor?
Just one from page 2, the history of sales. You have 2017, 1.25 million or 1,250,000. But May 7th, 2001, $500,000. That's accurate. That's correct. 2001.
Yeah.
Okay. And renovations, as you said, were done subsequent to the October 2017 date.
Yes, to my knowledge.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ian. Brent, any questions of the assessors?
Just one quick question. Justin, what were the extent of the renovations? Were they mechanical? And I mean, we can see from the pictures there's cosmetics done. But in terms of the heating system, was there an upgrade there?
I would have to pull up a permit here. You know what? I don't have that exact information on hand at the moment.
Okay, that's fine. No other questions.
Thank you. So Justin, I'm looking at the picture of the exterior of the property. As you stated that there has been renovations done since the 2017 sale or purchase, pardon me. So it looks like there's newer windows,
Right.
Newer glazing, I guess, something done on the top fascia there around the roof. So, but you're not aware of any exact details on a building permit taken out or multiple building permits taken out?
No.
Okay. Picture shows renovated and painted and everything on the inside. My next question is the location of the subject property. How far west on College Avenue are we? Are we down towards McPhillips?
It's actually more on the corner of College and Fife.
Fife, okay.
Yeah.
So we're just east of McPhillips or
It would be west.
oh yeah, okay.
East?
I think it's east.
Okay, let me just.
Or no, west.
I'll check right now. I'm pretty sure it's west of McPhillips. Yeah, it's west of McPhillips. So it's on College Avenue between Fife and McPhillips.
So towards Keewatin, would that be between McPhillips and Keewatin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I was looking at your comparables here.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, bear with me.
Yep.
On page, where are we? Oh boy, okay. Comparables, page 4.
It was on page 4.
Yes. So those are on McPhillips 1100 block, then basically 1100 block in McGregor, and another one on. So 3 on the 1100 block of McPhillips. So are those up towards that end of close to the subject property? Or in that neighborhood? Would that be fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say they're in the neighborhood.
So we're between Selkirk and And in Inkster, would that be fair? That would be in that area?
Just grab that for you.
Trying to type the answer, but
Sorry.
technical difficulties.
It's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, like we're so 1168 McPhillips would be just south of Inkster.
Okay.
I mean, it's probably a 2-minute drive to College.
Okay.
Property on College.
All right. And McGregor, again, that would be up north in that same area directly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Mr. Chair?
Of course.
So on the same topic, looking at the rental comparables there, we have the 3 properties that were noted to be on McPhillips Street. So that would be a major thoroughfare with strong transit access. Is that fair to say? That,
Yeah.
Access to public transport would be better at the comparables than at the subject property.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my only question.
Thank you, Trevor. Okay. That's all our questions. So Trevor, if you just bear with us 1 second, let me find your brief, please. Okay, Ian, Brent, are you on there?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Trevor, when you're ready, please. 1266 College Avenue.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. So let's get into the report here. So the cover page of my brief gives you an external shot of the frontage of the property. As indicated, Mr. Chair, yes, the windows were replaced in the renovation for the property. Generally, what we're dealing with is beyond that is cosmetic issues in the units themselves, which is fairly typical of this type of renovation. If you flip into the photos beginning on page number 4, we have a couple of the exterior, one of the back of the building, and then we get into the property itself. So being built in 62, it hadn't had very much, if anything, done to it previously. So the renovations were done on the property subsequent to the purchase in 2017. So let's look at what the result is here. So page number 5, we still have a concrete block building, as you can see in the hallway. Obviously, they put in new carpet and lighting into the common area there. The flooring that was put into the units is a hard-wearing utilitarian one. It is that vinyl, I forget what the proper terminology is at the moment, but it's not hardwood, certainly. The unit renovations, as you can see, are again, they are new, but they are not by any means high end. They're appropriate to the neighborhood that the subject property is in, and they're largely designed to be lasting but cost efficient. So that is the property itself. Let's move back to my page number 3. As I mentioned with prior property, we do have some background for the subject property. So our 2023 assessment, we're looking at a value of $2,187,000. This is an increase of 45.6% versus the 2020 assessment, as shown on the page there. Our original date of construction is 1962. And we have a total of 17 units, 1 bachelor, 8 one bedrooms and 8 2-bedrooms for the subject property. The site itself is shown on my page number 7. It is indeed at the corner of Fife and College, essentially adjacent to the Inkster industrial area of Winnipeg. You can see an aerial of the property on page number 7 there. Fife is essentially the boundary of Inkster industrial. If you flip to page 8, well, this is not color, at least in my copy here, you do get an indication of how close the subject property is to that industrial area. And of course, the fact that it's not located on a main thoroughfare. So your public transport here would be significantly inferior to being located on McPhillips, which is a driver in lower income residential areas of the city. Let's move on. I did, of course, indicate the sale history in 2017, and the property has been renovated since then. So let's move on to the actual analysis. Our page number 10, we can get into the income. I've shown the monthly rents in the chart at the top of the page there. So we have bachelors going for $750, 1 beds at $888, and 2 beds for $1,025. The annual gross potential revenue that results from this is $192,648. Now, interestingly, that's full occupancy at full rates. So if we look at the 2020 income and expense questionnaire, which is included in both my addenda as well as the city's, you can see that the actual revenue collected for rent was $182,722. So approximately $10,000 lower than the gross potential revenue for the subject property at full occupancy at full rates. So Cmhc statistics are provided middle of the page there. Subject property falls within that Lord Selkirk area. And we have bachelors at 644 under the 750 for the subject, 1 beds at 764 and 2 beds at 961. Now, that's a rather large area, Lord Selkirk, so I'm not saying that that's standard throughout the area, but it does give you an indicator of the lower rental rate structure in that particular area. If we look at the site of the subject itself, again, it's located abutting essentially that Inkster industrial area. And that would have an impact on desirability of the property as well as rental rates that could be achieved. There is no actual parking revenue generated from the subject or laundry revenue from the subject. So those have not been added as there is no revenue present. Let's move on to the expenses for the property. The vacancy, we look at Cmhc stats, the Lord Selkirk area, we have vacancy in and around 3.3% for 1 bedroom, 3.6 for 2 bedroom, and an overall of 3.3%. The subject property, if you look at the income and expense information versus the potential revenue as stated by the owner, we're looking at about a delta of $10,000, which would be in and around 5% for the subject. So we have, in our analysis, deferred to the city's lower amount of 4.2%. Let's move on to the expense allowance. The stabilized history of the subject property is shown for you on page number 12. And you can see the actual history of it there. Stabilization has been done in the column on the right-hand side with our notes as to any changes that have been made. We've made, of course, the standard change with regard to property management fees. Where appropriate, we've included the actuals. I would note for this particular owner, which holds for the prior property as well, and I'm not quite sure how to couch this, but if anything, they tend to underreport in that they don't necessarily have figures for each of the categories to present to you in all of the years. We have made an adjustment, of course, on repair and maintenance. Now, the property has been renovated, at least the interiors of the units, as noted, and the common hallways. Nevertheless, we have a property from originally built in 1962, with all the issues that carry along with that. So a temporarily lower repair and maintenance budget will not necessarily carry forward over time. So we've projected, again, an industry standard $1,500 per unit for the subject property. The issue of renovations and newness of that will come up in that potentially it will need less repair. I would caution you on that front as well, in that often in many cases you'll put in the new renovations to units, but given location, etc., often the units receive higher than normal wear and damage, and can have replacement and repair costs that would be typical of an older property without renovations, etc. So we're not projecting anything that would be unlikely to occur. To back this up, if you look at 2019, you can see the higher R&M for that particular year. So our stabilized expenses for the subject property come out to $87,855. And that results in a expense budget percentage of 47.6% of effective gross income. Now, you'll see this later, but on page 18, that essentially coincides with what the city's projected expense allowance percent is for the subject property. Moving on, I'm not going to run through our capitalization rate discussion in the way that we did for the prior property. All of that material holds the same. We'll simply look at the subject property itself. So we have a property that is located west of McPhillips, essentially adjacent to the Inkster Industrial Park, kind of a lower income area. Certainly, it has already been fully renovated. There is no potential to increase the income for the property and increase your return in that manner. The rents that are there for the property are relatively affordable, I guess I would say, and that is post renovation. So they were not able to achieve rents that were higher than these amounts, despite the renovation that was undertaken on the property. So we have a property that essentially you can't see a financial lift on in a somewhat lower income residential area that might be somewhat less desirable. So we wouldn't be paying a premium for this if we were an astute investor. So the cap rate that we've applied to the subject property is 5.5%. And this is summarized on my page number 18. So our valuation of the property is in the left-hand column of the chart as shown. The in-place rental revenue at full occupancy at full rental rates comes to 192,648 as projected. Now, I would again caution you, they didn't get 192,648. They got $182,722 for the subject year. Now, the city has projected $207,725. Property's already renovated. It's not possible to increase the rent to that amount. So there is no astute investor out there that is going to pay for a property on that basis. They're going to look at what it generates, what it can potentially generate, etc. And clearly, the potential rent, which isn't being achieved, is certainly the highest they would pay based on the numbers present. We have no parking income. The vacancy rate for the subject, as shown, we've applied 4.2%. Again, you look at the gross potential of 192 and what was collected of 182, that's in the neighborhood of 5% plus. We've applied 4.2%. The expense allowance coincides with the expense allowance percentage of the city, purely coincidentally, but it does indicate that they're on the same level there with regard to that projection. And using a cap rate of 5.5% for the reasons stated gives us our final market value of $1,758,000. And that is my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Would the assessors have any questions of the appellant's evidence presented?
Yeah, if you could just go to page 12 of his evidence regarding the expense allowance. Again, just touching on the repair and maintenance issue. I mean, when you look at the numbers from 2018 to 2020, the highest they had was $782 per unit in 2019. And then we see a number of $1,500 per unit being applied, and then whereas $1,200 per unit was applied to waterfront, these properties, they were both newer. So how, like, wouldn't you say $1,000 would be more appropriate for this property?
Sorry, did you say that they were both newer?
Well, they're both more recently renovated, right? So one's new, this one's renovated. The new one had 1,200 unit per unit.
Justin, would just stick with the evidence presented in this brief, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Why 1,500?
So
if I may answer your
okay, question. For sure.
Okay, so you're commenting with regard to the repair and maintenance issue, and I believe I probably addressed part of that in my discussion with regard to properties having been renovated, and then the R&M that is resultant from that. You may see a dip for a short period of time for those properties, but again, units having been renovated doesn't necessarily mean that the R&M is going to be lower. Often you'll see, again, in areas of lower income and tougher use, which certainly this area would fall within, you often see what I'll term heavier use of the units, and you see repair costs that are that are relatively standard. Now, I recognize that we're looking at expenses in 2018, 19, and 20 here exclusively. I will point out that property was sold on October 12th, 2017, and it was undergoing renovations throughout 2018. So that's going to obviously drive down your repair and maintenance number as they're going through the process of renovation. We then have a single year of 2019 showing you the 13,295 and 2020, and I believe Mr. Barakis will probably back me up on this. Just a little over $2,000 is somewhat anomalous in terms of a repair and maintenance number for any type of apartment unit in the city. So there is some background there that we're not covering. I would also point out that 1,500 per unit is again on the low side in terms of an accepted industry standard, and I believe is often used by the city of Winnipeg in both their modeling and their presentations as well.
Can I just interject? I don't believe I've ever said that $2,000 a unit on R&M is standard in any hearing, and I didn't present that here today.
Sorry, I never referred to $2,000 or yourself in particular.
Okay, just clarifying that.
Okay, and then next here with the caretaker just below, I mean, so you have $10,000 applied saying that that's actual, and yet in 2018, 2019, and 2020, there's nothing that's been reported. So where did you, like, how did you come up with applying that?
Yeah, I'm happy to address that. I will, of course, acknowledge the typo in the notes, that not being the actual amount. Thank you for pointing that out. That is a projection for caretaking. Now, again, we can these briefs can become like 100 pages long, where I present information on typical caretaking costs on average in properties built between 62 and 65 in the West McPhillips area. But $10,000 for caretaking costs is certainly not out of line. There is no potential that you have no caretaking costs for a property, and yet if you look at the income and expense shown, we have no caretaking costs indicated. Now that's not accurate. The property is caretaked, is looked after and cleaned, and they do have caretaking costs, but we do not have any indication of what they are, nor was I able to ascertain that detail from the owner. So what we've done is make a projection based on our market knowledge, and 10,000 would be certainly a conservative estimate. It does jump off the page when you look at it, but it's not in any sense out of line. And if you look at the overall operating expense percentage, it's clearly in line with what a typical operation would be for a property of this nature.
Okay, that's all for questions.
Thank you, Justin. Brent, any questions of Mr. Smith?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ian, any questions?
No, I think I've got everything I require from the evidence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I guess, Mr. Smith, I'm also looking at your page 12, your expense calculations, and so in the totals there, you've got an average of about 55,000, and you stabilize it at, for 2021, at about 80, let's call it 88,000. I guess, I guess you've already explained where your R&M averaged out at and your caretaking expenses. That's what makes the difference right there.
That's certainly part I would also point out, if you look at utilities and HVAC, the lack of any particular expense being shown there. Now that's to do with heating type, but there are also other costs that typically fall into there as well.
Okay. That's all my questions. Any requirement for summary by either party? Justin? No? Okay. Trevor, any summary?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so that concludes 1266 College Avenue. And we have heard all the items scheduled, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you very much to all parties.